In 2008, a small Taiwanese company did something no one else could do. It launched the very first Android smartphone ever made. That company was HTC. And for a brief moment, HTC was not just a smartphone maker. It was the king of Android, the darling of tech reviewers, and a giant killer. By 2011, HTC had become the largest smartphone seller in America, bigger than Apple, bigger than Samsung, bigger than everyone. Then something went terribly wrong. Within just a few years, HTC went from dominating the market to near extinction. Its market share collapsed from nearly 11% to less than 1%. Today, HTC is barely a footnote in smartphone history. So what happened to the Android king? How did a company that invented the future lose everything it built? This is not just a story about bad luck or tough competition. This is a masterclass in how to lose a billion-dollar lead. Let us go back to where it all started. HTC was founded in 1997 in Taiwan by Cher Wang and ST Cho. The name stands for High-Tech Computer Corporation, which tells you their ambition. But HTC did not start by making phones for itself. It was a behind-the-scenes player, a ghost in the machine. HTC designed and built gadgets for other companies to sell under their own names. You might have used an HTC product without ever knowing it. Those early compact IPAQ devices that executives loved in the early 2000s. HTC made them. The company was brilliant at engineering, but invisible to consumers. It was like a chef cooking for a famous restaurant but never getting credit. For years, HTC was happy with this arrangement. It made good money without the headaches of marketing and branding. But then, the smartphone revolution arrived and everything changed. In 2007, Apple launched the iPhone and rewrote the rules of mobile. Suddenly, every tech company wanted to compete in smartphones. Google saw the iPhone and knew it needed a response. So Google created Android, a free operating system for phone makers. And Google needed a partner to build the very first Android phone. They chose HTC. In October 2008, HTC launched the HTC Dream, also called the G1. It was clunky by today's standards, with a slide-out keyboard, but it was revolutionary. The Dream was the first phone to run Android, the software that now powers billions. HTC had just launched the operating system that would change the world, and HTC was perfectly positioned to ride the Android wave. The next few years were magical for HTC. It released hit after hit, each one better than the last. The HTC Hero introduced Sense, a beautiful custom interface for Android. The EVO 4G was the first phone with a front-facing camera for video calls. The HTC Thunderbolt was one of the first phones to support super-fast LTE networks. HTC was not just keeping up with the smartphone revolution, it was leading it. By 2010, HTC sold over 24 million phones, more than double the prior year. In February 2011, HTC won Device Manufacturer of the Year at Mobile World Congress. This was the Oscars of the mobile industry, and HTC was the star. Then came the crowning achievement. In the third quarter of 2011, HTC became the top smartphone seller in America. It had 24% market share, beating Samsung at 21%, and yes, even Apple at 20%. HTC, a company most consumers had never heard of, was now number one. Its stock price soared. Its brand value hit $3.6 billion. HTC had gone from a hidden manufacturer to the Android king in just 3 years. But here is where the story takes a dark turn, because everything that made HTC successful was about to become a liability. The first crack appeared in HTC's product strategy. HTC was addicted to launching new phones, far too many of them. In 2011 alone, HTC released dozens of different models. There was the Sensation, the Resound, the Vivid, the Amaze, and many more. Each phone was slightly different, targeting different carriers and price points. This strategy had worked when HTC was a behind-the-scenes manufacturer, but as a consumer brand, it was a disaster. Customers were confused about which HTC phone to buy. The company was competing against itself, cannibalizing its own sales. Meanwhile, Apple sold just one iPhone model each year and dominated the news. Samsung had multiple phones, but the Galaxy S line was clearly the flagship. HTC had no clear hero product, just a blur of similar-looking devices. And this confusion extended to HTC's brand identity. What did HTC stand for in the mind of consumers? Apple meant premium design and a seamless ecosystem. But HTC had no clear answer to this question. Its tagline was quietly brilliant, which sounds nice but means nothing. Being quiet is not a winning strategy when your rivals are shouting. And shouting is exactly what Samsung started to do. In 2012, Samsung unleashed a marketing blitz unlike anything HTC could match. Samsung spent billions of dollars on advertising, celebrity endorsements, and retail displays. The Galaxy brand became synonymous with Android in the minds of consumers. HTC simply did not have the money to compete at that scale. Samsung was a massive conglomerate with deep pockets from TVs, appliances, and memory chips. HTC was a focused smartphone company with limited resources. The marketing gap was brutal. For every dollar HTC spent on advertising, Samsung spent many times more. Consumers forgot about HTC and fell in love with the Galaxy. By early 2012, HTC's American market share had collapsed. It went from 24% to single digits in just months. The Android king had been dethroned almost overnight. But HTC was not ready to give up just yet. In 2013, HTC made one last bold attempt to reclaim its throne. It launched the HTC One M7, and this phone was a masterpiece. The One had a stunning aluminum body when most phones were plastic. It had front-facing stereo speakers that made every other phone sound like a tin can. And it introduced ultra-pixel technology, a new approach to smartphone cameras. Critics went absolutely wild for the HTC One. It won Best New Mobile Device at Mobile World Congress 2013. A year later, it was named the best smartphone of the entire year. The HTC One sold around 5 million units in its first 2 months. HTC finally had a hero product that could compete with the iPhone and Galaxy. So why did it not save the company? The answer reveals HTC's deepest problems. First, there were supply chain disasters. HTC could not get enough parts to meet the massive demand for the One. Manufacturing delays pushed the launch back in key markets like Asia and North America. By the time HTC had enough phones on shelves, Samsung had already launched the Galaxy S4. The Galaxy S4 sold 10 million units in its first month alone. That is double what the HTC One sold in 2 months. HTC had the better reviewed phone but lost the sales battle badly. Second, HTC's marketing still could not match Samsung's firepower. In 2013, HTC tried a new approach with celebrity endorsements. It signed Robert Downey Jr., the star of Iron Man, for a 2-year campaign. The ads were quirky and creative, with Downey joking about what HTC could stand for. But the campaign confused consumers more than it converted them. People remembered the funny ads but forgot to buy HTC phones. Samsung's straightforward Galaxy promotions were far more effective at driving sales. Third, HTC made a puzzling decision that hurt its comeback. Remember when HTC bought a 51% stake in Beats Electronics in 2011? Beats headphones were a cultural phenomenon, beloved by celebrities and athletes. HTC phones with Beats audio could have been a powerful differentiator. But in 2013, HTC sold back its entire Beats stake. It needed the cash but gave up a major competitive advantage. 2 years later, Apple bought Beats for $3 billion. HTC had owned the golden ticket and let it slip away. By late 2013, HTC recorded its first ever quarterly loss. The company that had been worth billions was now losing nearly $100 million. CEO Peter Cho had privately told executives he would resign if the One failed. The One won awards, but it did not win the market. HTC tried again with the One M8 in 2014. Another beautiful phone, another round of great reviews. Sales improved slightly, but it was not enough to reverse the decline. The smartphone market had fundamentally changed, and HTC was being squeezed from all sides. At the top, Apple and Samsung dominated with massive marketing and loyal customers. At the bottom, Chinese brands like Xiaomi and Huawei offered great phones at lower prices. HTC was stuck in the middle with no clear path forward. Its premium phones could not outsell Samsung, and it refused to compete on price. The market share kept falling quarter after quarter, year after year. By 2015, HTC's stock had fallen 90% from its peak. The company that once ruled Android was worth a fraction of its former glory. HTC knew it needed to diversify beyond smartphones. In March 2015, HTC unveiled something completely different. It partnered with gaming company Valve to create the HTC Vive. The Vive was a virtual reality headset that let you walk around virtual worlds. It was ahead of its time and received strong reviews from the tech press. HTC saw VR as its escape route from the smartphone bloodbath, but virtual reality was a tiny market compared to smartphones. The Vive sold around 140,000 units by late 2016. That sounds decent until you remember Samsung sold hundreds of millions of phones each year. VR could not replace the smartphone revenue HTC was losing. The company kept bleeding money and employees. Then came the final chapter of HTC's smartphone story. In September 2017, Google announced a stunning deal with HTC. Google would pay $1.1 billion for part of HTC's smartphone business. About 2,000 HTC engineers would move to Google, including the Pixel phone team. Google also received a non-exclusive license to HTC's patents. This was essentially HTC selling its smartphone soul to survive. The deal closed in January 2018, and the money provided some relief. But HTC's smartphone division was now a shadow of its former self. The same engineers who built the first Android phone were now building Google Pixels. HTC still makes phones today, but almost no one buys them. Its global market share has collapsed to effectively zero. The company focuses mostly on VR headsets and experimental products like blockchain phones. Revenue has fallen from billions to just a few $100 million. Losses continue year after year with no clear turnaround in sight. So what can we learn from HTC's spectacular fall? The first lesson is that being first is not enough. HTC launched the first Android phone, but Samsung captured the Android market. First mover advantage only matters if you can sustain and expand your lead. HTC got complacent while competitors were working furiously to catch up. The second lesson is about brand identity. Consumers need to know what you stand for before they will trust you. HTC never answered the fundamental question of why to choose HTC. Apple had design and ecosystem. Samsung had features and marketing. HTC had nothing clear. The third lesson is about matching your strategy to your resources. HTC tried to fight Samsung's marketing blitz with a fraction of the budget. That was a battle it could never win. A smaller player needs to find niches or innovations that neutralize bigger rivals. HTC spread itself too thin across too many models and markets. The fourth lesson is about supply chain execution. The HTC One was a potential savior, but manufacturing delays killed its momentum. In the smartphone business, timing is everything. Being late to market by even a few weeks can mean losing millions of sales. The fifth lesson is about knowing when to pivot. HTC held onto its premium smartphone strategy long after it stopped working. By the time it seriously invested in VR, the smartphone damage was already done. Sometimes the bravest business decision is admitting that a market has passed you by. HTC was once the definition of smartphone innovation. It gave us the first Android phone, the first front-facing camera, and beautiful aluminum designs. For one glorious quarter in 2011, it was the king of America's smartphone market. But being an innovator is not the same as being a winner. Samsung learned from HTC's innovations and outmarketed the original. Apple built an ecosystem that locked customers in for life. Chinese brands offered HTC quality at half the price, and HTC, the company that started it all, was left with nothing. The Android king did not lose the smartphone war in one battle. It lost slowly through 1,000 small mistakes that added up to disaster. Too many phones, too little marketing, no clear brand, and terrible timing. By the time HTC realized what was happening, it was already too late. Today, when you pick up your Android phone, remember where it all began. A small Taiwanese company had a dream of making technology quietly brilliant. It achieved that dream for a moment, then watched it slip away. That is the tragedy of HTC, the forgotten father of Android.